In this tutorial, I'm going to explain how you can make a pivot chart, motion chart, radar chart, and sparkline chart. These charts are intended to organize complex data sets and make them easier to analyze. Let's begin with a pivot table. When creating a pivot table, you're comparing various aspects of a data set, combining them into like categories, and summarizing them into an easy-to-read table. To begin, start with your spreadsheet that contains several columns of information. Select these columns. Go to the tab at the top that says Data and select Pivot Table. When selecting this, Google Sheets will create a new tab at the bottom where you can formulate your pivot table. On the right, an editor window will appear where you can customize the pivot table to your liking. You can begin by adding the rows that need to combine the like information from your spreadsheet. At the top, go to Add Field and select which rows you'd like it to combine. In this case, I'd like it to combine all of the times that a single school appears in this list. Next, you can select which columns you would like displayed within your pivot table. Next to columns, select Add Field and decide what you'd like it to show. I'd like it to show the years, and I can choose how I'd like it to be sorted as well. I can also uncheck the box that says Show Totals if I do not want a grand total on the far right of my pivot table. Next, I can select the values that I'd like to appear within those columns. If I go to Add Field, I can select from each of those years what I'd like displayed. In this instance, I'd like to see the average score of each school per year. Now you'll notice that it's displaying a sum at the bottom. If I wanted to, I can change how that is displayed by selecting Summarize By and choosing a different function from this list. In this situation, I'd like to see the average score each year. And once I select that, the grand total will update with averages. If I wanted to filter out my view and limit the results to something specific, I can also choose to filter by one of the categories listed. In this case, I'd like to filter by school, and I can select which items I'd like to see. So if there were specific schools I wanted to see and others that I was not interested in seeing, I can check and uncheck the boxes according to my liking and press OK to update the pivot table. Next, we're going to talk about a motion chart. And motion charts allow you to see longitudinal data displayed in a dynamic way. When creating a motion chart, you'll need the first column of your data to contain the entity names that you'd like it to track. In the second column, you'll need it to display some date values that will be tracked over time. And then finally, your subsequent columns should include the text or the numeric sets that you'd like to track over that period of time. Once you have these required columns in your spreadsheet, select the data that you'd like to include in the motion chart and go up to the top where you see the Insert menu and select Chart. You'll be provided with some recommendations for chart types, but if you select the second tab, Chart Types, and scroll down, you should see an option in here for a motion chart, which looks like this. In the window on the right, you'll see a preview of what your motion chart will look like and a play button where you can watch the data displayed over time and how it changes. If it looks the way you'd like it to, you can select Insert. Your chart will be inserted onto the page with your data set. However, if you'd like to, you can select the drop-down menu in the top right corner of the chart and go to where it says Move to Own Sheet to expand the motion chart and display it full screen. Here you can select the colors that you'd like displayed, and you can choose to focus on specific entities that were included in your columns of data. If you wanted to, you could also include multiple subsequent data sets that you can display the correlation of in your motion chart. If that's the case, select all 4 or more of your columns, and once again, go to Insert, Chart. Under Chart Types, select Motion Chart. And now you will see a correlation between those 2 data sets and how they changed over time. Next, we're going to talk about how to create a radar chart, which is a way to display one or more variables in a 2-dimensional graph. When creating your radar chart, you'll need to include at least 2 columns of quantitative data that you'd like to be displayed. Select your range on your Google Sheet, go to the Insert menu, select Chart, and under Chart Types, scroll until you find the Radar Chart option. Insert the chart, and what you'll be able to see then is discrepancies between any of those columns of data. As I look at this spreadsheet, I notice that this student Christopher has a wide range of scores that appear in each of those 3 columns of data because they are further apart from each other along that spectrum. However, some other students maintained very consistent scores in all 3 testing periods. As I can see, their lines match up very evenly on the radar chart. Like other charts, if I'd like to, I can use the drop-down menu at the top right corner to move the chart to its own sheet for full screen viewing. Finally, let's take a look at how you would create a Sparkline chart. A Sparkline chart is a chart that shows trends in data over time, allowing you to draw conclusions from the general shape of those lines over time. In this case, I have a spreadsheet of data that contains 3 columns with scores from 3 different testing periods. I'm going to select that data set, go to the Insert menu, select Chart, choose Chart Types, and scroll until under the Other category I find the Sparkline chart. I can select Insert and allow that to show either on the page with your data set or move it to its own sheet again, and you can see. Now, as I analyze this data set, I can see from the Sparkline chart that there was a general dip in scores in the winter, followed by a general increase in scores in the spring. So I may not have been able to draw those conclusions by looking at the table alone, but the Sparkline chart allowed me to easily visualize those trends over time.